The ink on the deed was still tacky when Ethan Cole stood before the sprawling, parched estate of Oak Haven. Spanning over 100 acres of sun-baked brushwood and rust-colored dust, the property was a testament to time's cruelty. Its perimeter fences drooped like weary skeletons, and nestled in the shadow of the low hills sat the main homestead, a grand, weather-beaten structure of dark timber that looked less like a home and more like a tomb holding its breath. It had cost him exactly $1 silver. Ray Boone, the slippery land broker with shifting eyes and yellowed teeth, had practically shoved the brass key into Ethan's palm before galloping away as if the prairie itself were on fire. Abandoned for years, Boone had swore, refusing to lock eyes with his buyer. No living soul claims it. Take it, and welcome to your solitude. Ethan took a deep breath of the hot, pine-scented air. For 5 grueling years, he had broken his back in the timber camps, enduring bone-chilling cold and suffocating loneliness to save every copper he earned. This battered land was supposed to be his sanctuary, a blank canvas where a man with a heavy past could finally disappear. Stepping onto the warped porch, Ethan turned the heavy brass latch. The door groaned open, revealing a dusty entryway bathed in amber sunlight filtering through cracked window panes. Then, the quiet shattered. From the floor above came a sound that made Ethan's blood run cold, soft, deliberate, measured footsteps pacing across the floorboards. Ethan froze, his hand tightening around his travel satchel. Slowly, his right hand drifted toward the hunting knife tucked into his belt. Boone said it was empty, he muttered under his breath. Ray Boone is a liar who only sees what fits in his ledger, a voice called down. Ethan looked up. Standing at the landing of the sweeping mahogany staircase was a young woman. Her dark, unruly hair fell over the shoulders of a faded, thrice-patched linen dress. She did not flinch, scream, or reach for a weapon. Instead, she observed him with a deep, unsettling tranquility, the quiet composure of someone who had rehearsed this exact encounter in her dreams. "I take it you're the stranger who bought 100 acres for the price of a hot meal," she said softly, descending the steps with fluid, unhurried grace. "Ethan Cole," he managed, finding his voice. "And you are trespassing." "Lena Harper," she replied, stopping 3 steps above him. "And I've been keeping this place from falling into ash for 3 long years. I patched that roof over your head, unclogged the stone well, and rebuilt the eastern barn. Boone didn't mention me because he's terrified of what I know." Ethan frowned, the illusion of his fresh start crumbling beneath his heavy boots. "If you've been living here, why let it be sold?" "Because paperwork doesn't protect you from desperate men, Mr. Cole," Lena said, her calm facade cracking to reveal a flicker of raw, unyielding terror. "And the men tracking me don't care about deeds." Before Ethan could demand an explanation, the distant rumble of iron-shod hooves vibrated through the floorboards. Lena went rigid. She darted to the side window, gently parting the lace curtain. "They were supposed to arrive at dusk," she whispered, her voice stripped of its earlier bravado. "They've tracked me faster than I calculated." Ethan joined her at the glass. 3 riders were trotting up the long driveway, their silhouettes sharp against the blinding afternoon sun. They rode with purpose, hands resting lazily near their holsters. "Who are they?" Ethan asked, his pulse hammering against his ribs. "Thieves with badges and guns," Lena replied bitterly. "Men who murdered my father for what lies beneath these hills." Moving with urgent precision, Lena knelt by the stone fireplace. She pried up a notched hearthstone with her fingernails, pulling out a oilskin-wrapped package. Unrolling it on the dining table, she revealed a set of meticulous survey maps, handwritten coordinates, and a certified territorial claim bearing a wax seal. "My father discovered the primary gold vein in the North Ridge," she explained, her fingers tracing the faded ink. "The Mercer Syndicate forged a land grant, killed him in his sleep, and tried to burn his records. I escaped with the original title and the surveyor's ledger. This isn't just paper, Ethan. It's a fortune and my father's blood." A harsh hail echoed from the front yard. "Lena Harper, come out and let's settle this like old friends." Ethan looked at the girl. She was barely out of her teens, hunted, exhausted, yet standing tall in a house that wasn't legally hers to defend. 5 years of isolation had taught Ethan to avoid other people's trouble, but something in her resolute gaze anchored him to the spot. "Stay inside," Ethan said, dropping his satchel. "Let me talk to them." He stepped out onto the porch, pulling the heavy oak door shut behind him. The lead rider dismounted. A tall, lean man with a scarred jaw and eyes as cold as river ice. A silver star was pinned carelessly to his leather vest, though it lacked any official authority in this district. "You must be the dollar man," the leader sneered, resting his hand on the pearl grip of his revolver. "Name's Cole Mercer. You're standing on private business, friend. Step aside and let us collect what's ours." "This land belongs to me now," Ethan said, keeping his voice dead even. "You're trespassing on private property." Mercer let out a dry, barking laugh. $1 doesn't buy you a backbone, boy. I don't need a warrant out here. I just need 6 inches of lead." Mercer drew his weapon with blinding speed, pressing the cold, blue steel barrel directly against the center of Ethan's forehead. The metallic click of the hammer cocking echoed in the absolute silence of the prairie. "Last chance, dollar man. Move or bleed." Ethan didn't blink. Behind him, he heard the faint scrape of the hearthstone inside. Lena was securing the evidence. He just needed to hold Mercer's focus for a few more seconds. Then, a thunderous salvo of hooves shattered the standoff. A dust cloud erupted from the tree line as 6 riders thundered onto the courtyard, rifles raised. At the front was the regional marshal, his brass star gleaming brightly in the sun. "Mercer, drop the iron." "Now." Mercer's face twisted into a mask of pure rage. Seeing his leverage vanish, he snarled, swinging the barrel toward Ethan's chest to fire a parting shot. Ethan lunged forward, slamming his shoulder into Mercer's chest just as the gun detonated. The shot went wide, tearing through the porch railing. A sharp rifle crack echoed from the marshal's line. Mercer stiffened, dropped his revolver, and collapsed into the dirt. His 2 cohorts threw their hands into the air immediately. By nightfall, the legal authorities had hauled away the survivors and secured the forged documents. The marshal assured Lena that her father's claim would be brought before the territorial high court in the capital, but true peace was still a distant dream. As twilight painted the sky in shades of bruised purple and deep crimson, Ethan sat on the edge of the porch, mending a leather strap. Lena stepped out, carrying 2 steaming mugs of black coffee. "The marshal says I have a clear path to reclaiming my father's estate," she said gently, handing him a mug. "I suppose you'll want me to pack my things." Ethan took a slow sip, looking out over the vast, whispering grasslands. "You spent 3 years holding this house together with your bare hands. It'd be foolish to drive off the only person who knows how to keep the well running." Lena smiled faintly, a genuine spark of warmth touching her eyes for the first time. "I bought my stay with labor then. Let's call it a partnership," Ethan said, holding out his hand. 50-50. We rebuild this place together." She shook his hand firmly. "Partners." For 3 days, a quiet rhythm settled over Oakhaven. They mended fences, scrubbed years of grime from the timber walls, and coaxed life back into the barren soil. But on the 4th night, the silence shattered once more. Hours before dawn, the farm's stray hound began to bark frantically near the stables. The barking ceased abruptly with a sickening thud. Ethan bolted out of bed, grabbing his lever-action rifle from the corner. Lena met him in the hallway, already fully clothed, her face pale in the moonlight. "It's not over," she whispered. "Mercer was just an enforcer. The Mercer syndicate, the Maddox family behind him, they won't let a court date destroy their empire." A sudden orange glow illuminated the bedroom window. Ethan sprinted outside just in time to see the wooden barn enveloped in a roaring wall of fire. Dry timber burned like tinder, sending plumes of thick, black smoke swirling into the starry night sky. "The original survey ledger," Lena cried out, pointing toward the burning structure. "I hid my father's secondary journal beneath the floorboards in the tack room. It contains the names of every judge and politician the Maddox family bribed." Without hesitation, Ethan wet his coat in the water trough, draped it over his head, and charged into the inferno. Inside, the heat was blinding, the air thick with suffocating ash. Beams groaned and snapped above him as sparks rained down like burning hail. Coughing violently, Ethan kicked through the collapsing embers in the tack room, hammering his rifle but against the charred floorboards until they gave way. He grabbed the metal-bound journal just as the central roof beam gave out with a deafening roar. Ethan threw himself out the side barn window, tumbling into the dirt seconds before the entire structure collapsed into a mountain of white-hot rubble. From the dark tree line, a rifle shot whipped through the air, splintering the fence post inches from Ethan's head. Shadows retreated into the brush, leaving behind a chilling message painted in red pitch on the front gate. This soil is drunk on blood. It will never be yours. 2 days later, Ethan and Lena rode into the territorial capital, carrying the charred but legible ledger straight to the federal prosecutor. The contents of the journal sent shockwaves through the territory. Names of corrupt marshals, bought-off land registrars, and wealthy mining magnates were laid bare in precise, undeniable detail. Within weeks, federal warrants were issued across 3 states, and the corrupt infrastructure that had terrorized the valley for a decade began to crumble under the weight of its own greed. When the final trials concluded months later, the land was officially restored to Lena Harper. But she did not sell it, nor did she keep it solely for herself. Spring had arrived by the time Ethan and Lena returned to the homestead. Green shoots were pushing through the scorched earth where the barn had once stood. Together, alongside dozens of neighboring homesteaders who had suffered under the syndicate's tyranny, they rebuilt the estate, not as an isolated fortress, but as a community. On a warm evening as the sun dipped behind the jagged peaks of the western mountains, Ethan and Lena stood on the newly constructed porch. The fences were straight, the cattle grazed peacefully in the valley, and the house seemed to breathe a long-awaited sigh of relief. Lena held her father's restored journal in her hands. Slowly, she walked to the corner of the porch and locked it inside a heavy iron chest buried beneath the stone foundation. "For memory," she said softly, looking up at the vast expanse of stars beginning to fill the evening sky. Not for fear. Ethan leaned against the sturdy porch pillar, looking out over the land that had cost him $1 and given him a purpose beyond measure. "It belonged to blood once," Ethan said softly. "Now, it belongs to the people who care for it." The wind swept softly across the high grass, carrying away the ghosts of the past, leaving behind 2 guardians standing shoulder to shoulder against the night. Write in the comments which country you are watching the video from, and don't forget to subscribe and press like. Goodbye.